Good morning. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Candy, and for 2.5 years I ran a podcast called Common Sense with Candy, and due to popular demand, decided to bring it back with things that are important to me, and I hope that you enjoy them too. Back in 2014, I wrote a book called Spoken Softly with the intention of it being like a mini Bible for people. Well, I'll give you an example. My oldest son works a lot of hours, and frankly, he doesn't have the time. And my youngest son has learning disabilities, and it would be very difficult for him to read. I've often made the joke he'd be reading begot, and then he'd be gone. So, with that sole purpose in mind, I wrote that book. I learned the hard way that only the publisher and the retailer makes money off from it. And I proved it because you have to carry fees in order to get your royalties, and your royalties are about 90 cents on a $10 book. So, anyhow, originally it was my intention after writing Spoken Softly to do a sequel called Spoken Softly by Angels or with Angels. I wasn't quite sure on that title. And anyhow, due to the expense of it, I decided, you know what? Look how fast I can't believe it's been 9 years since I wrote that book. And time just keeps slipping away from me. So, in this modern day and age, I decided to do a video. It should be less than an hour, and I think you'll really, really be happy that you took the time to listen. So, this will be in two parts. The first part is going to be an introduction to angels, and then the second part is I'm going to tell you actual stories that people have told me from all over the United States. Did you know that it's been said angels, by the way, I read because I get my tang tangled all the time, so this way I don't miss a beat. Did you know that it's been said angels drop pennies heads up when they are happy for something we did? If the heads are down, that means they're aware, just not as happy. So it makes me happy every single time I find a penny. Do you believe in angels? We all have guardian angels, and they share their presence with us subtle or sometimes in more obvious ways. We receive messages in dreams through animals, music, or other humans. Have the hairs on your neck or arms stood up ever? Have you started to do something and then just stopped dead in your tracks for no reason, and you really didn't know why? Have you ever gotten a cold chill when a stranger gets near you? More than likely, those are angel encounters. Angels are easily drawn to loving and kind people. It really seems that the more thankful you are, the more you are blessed with their presence. Guardian angels are here to love, protect, and guard us. Of course, sometimes our poor guardian angels are working overtime, aren't they? I know mine have. We humans can be exhausting. And if you don't believe in angels, is that because it is not logical to your way of thinking? For you, seeing is believing? Just try to suspend your judgment and open your heart and mind to the possibility that guardian angels exist. That definitely means, hey, lighten up, relax. Have you ever tried meditation? That is a great way to ask your guardian angel to help you feel their presence, and once that happens, always be sure to thank them. For those whom I personally know who didn't believe, but now they do, well, they stated once they did that, they started having dreams in which they remembered certain music was just mesmerizing. They just felt more calm and peaceful. And just so you know, several years ago, I made a trip to Sedona, Arizona, where supposedly there had been more angel sightings than anywhere else in the United States. They even had vortex tours. So, my husband and I got a vortex map and we visited all these renowned spots of heightened spiritual and metaphysical energy. Well, the only angel I saw was a little souvenir I found in a gift shop. Just saying, didn't work for me. The universe holds all kinds of answers for us if we are receptive. Excuse me. Those that know and love me put up with my coughing fits. Sorry. If you constantly are saying, I'm broke, well, guess what? You will remain broke until you change your thought process. Instead, you should be thinking things like, please help me provide whatever for my family. If it's something you really need, not selfishness and self centeredness. All of us at one time or another in our life were worried about how we were going to get through a day, a week, or pay the bills for the month, how we were going to feed our family. But did you notice you did get through it? You got through the hard times, and hopefully you learned why the expression came about save for a rainy day, because every day isn't always full of sunshine, except in Florida. Even when it rains, the sun comes out for a little while just to tease us. Angel believers and non believers meditate or pray all the time to raise their vibration and frequency. Once you're at that point in life, don't let anyone rain on your parade. Angels are God's gifts to us, and we need to be open to receiving messages and asking for their help. God created angels even before creating man, as they were and are without sin. They are eternal. They are wise, intelligent, powerful, spiritual beings who are not meant to be worshipped. The Greek word for angel is messenger. Now, there are seven archangels who directly serve God, with Michael being the chief one. Michael is my favorite angel because he's the angel of strength and he serves as our guardian and protector. Michael was involved in the battle between the fallen angels and the archangels. Gabriel is a messenger and the one who told the priest Zacharias that he would have a son called John the Baptist, as well as he was the one that appeared to the Virgin Mary to let her know she would give birth to Jesus. Raphael's a healer and patron on the sacrament of reconciliation. The four other are not as famous. Uriel, he's for repentance. Raguel, justice and fairness. Zerachiel, God's judgment and patron of the sacrament of matrimony. More people need to call on him. Ramel, who is the archangel of hope, faith, and dreams. Then there are cherubs who look like cute little chubby babies with wings. They actually were the first mentioned angels in the Bible, right in the first book called Genesis, because God placed them to guard the tree of life after he drove Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. They held flaming swords. There are other references throughout the Bible with several different descriptions as to their appearances to include having four faces or several eyes. Cute cherubs with arrows are depicted as Cupid, who uses arrows and bows to cause people to fall in love. In ancient Roman mythology, Cupid is the god of love and was the son of Venus. Cupid was also mischievous and took pleasure in playing tricks on people. Angels might be explained as grown up cherubs appearing in the form of man. Many have wings, but not all. Some are invisible, and yet we can still feel their presence or hear their voice. Some are bright or shining, and others appear like ordinary humans. It is believed by many that the major and minor prophets of the Bible traveled with angels all the time. That makes sense to me. There are so many wonderful angel stories within the Bible. If you were blessed enough to grow up attending Sunday school, you've heard many of them, like Jonah being thrown in the bale of a whale, or Daniel being thrown in the lion's den. Of course, the most famous is the angel who appeared over the manger when Jesus was born. As we matured, we heard and learned about an angel being with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane where he went to pray. There are other numerous stories throughout history of those times and recorded by average, everyday humans. If you watched The Chosen, many things were pointed out, like the angels who delivered messages to both Mary and Joseph. In that movie, there's a scene where they compare notes, what they were told, because they were told at separate times. It's really cute. If you haven't watched The Chosen, you can view it free on Angel Studios. It makes the disciples' biblical life literally come alive, and your new insight to what they went through and what they gave up will stay with you for life. I very seldom watch any movie twice, but I've watched all 3 seasons twice. Along life's way, I was introduced to what I call an earthly angel. An angel who takes on human form to complete an assigned task. That task either being assigned by God or an archangel. I believe this human form is utilized because a bright spiritual light, or lit up angel, might be too much for us humans to handle, especially in traumatic situations. This is a good introduction to a miracle which occurred years ago and was relayed to me in 2016. My husband and I took a Caribbean cruise, and it's customary that you sit at the same dinner table each evening with the same group of people. A discussion occurred one of the evenings around my book, and then I told them that I was thinking about doing a sequel called Spoken Softly by Angels. Later on that evening, and a gentleman and his wife flagged us down. He wanted to share a story privately with us, which he had never told anyone in his life. Immediately, I was interested and began listening intently. I hate that because I need to write things down, and I just had to really listen intently because I didn't want to miss a thing. I didn't have to worry about it because the story is mesmerizing and um, awesome. I think I feel a sneeze come in. Oh, excuse me. Too early in the morning. But I'm a nature lover and I wanted to get outside before it got to be 119 with the humidity. So he began that he and his wife were in a foreign country and she had a surprise major heart attack, which required a long, intensive surgery. He sat for hours in a waiting room crying and praying all alone. I believe they had no children, but regardless, they were a long ways away from their homeland. Can you just imagine the fear which must have overcome him in being in a strange country with unknown doctors doing surgery on his wife? Plus, as the clock ticks away, it becomes almost unbearable. After quite a few hours passed, he felt a touch on his leg and words, "Don't worry, she'll be fine. They are almost finished and will be moving her to recovery, and you will be able to see her soon." When he glanced up, a young man dressed in what looked like a surgical gown with a name tag of Michael on the lapel was smiling at him. They exchanged a few more words which he doesn't even remember. The next day, when he visited his wife, he asked about Michael, and no one on that entire surgical team was named Michael. He even asked the doctor and the head floor nurse, and they said, "No, we don't even have anybody on this floor by that name." After he completed telling us this story, he said it always bothered him that he wasn't able to thank the man who sat with him almost an hour and really brought him comfort during that very stressful time. I told him that the man knows because he was an earthly angel and what many understand to be a walk-in angel because they walk in human body. I explained to him what I had told you earlier on how they take on human form necessary. This couple was from New Mexico, if I recall correctly. Several years ago, my cousin shared an event which happened to her in Howell, Michigan. Her husband had died about 4 years previous, and she missed him every single day, especially in the morning, where they used to chit chat over coffee, her favorite part of the day. Well, the day was Valentine's Day, and she's sitting there all alone, enjoying her coffee and feeling especially lonely. So she got up and when she was finished and put her coffee cup in the sink, and she was standing there thinking, Mel, please give me a sign that you're okay. And she looked up and glanced out the window, and there was a heart in the snow. She couldn't believe it. She grabbed her coat, she ran out there, and she looked. No tracks around it, no evidence of somebody playing a joke and moving a stick. Just plain and simple, a heart in the snow. Immediately, she knew that her dearly beloved husband had indeed sent her a very personal message. And here's a story out of the state of Virginia relayed to me about a little girl named Betty, who was a tomboy. One year for Christmas, she received a beautiful doll from Santa. She admired it and placed it on a shelf in her bedroom where it remained for 2 years. One Christmas season day, her mom came to her room and said, Betty, the church is collecting items for needy families, and I think you should donate that doll, as you never play with her, and it would make some little girl who has nothing very happy. So Betty took her doll down from the shelf and she played with her the rest of the day and thought about what her mamma had said to her. And when evening came, she came down the stairs and handed the doll to her mamma and said, You are right, mamma. It would be kind and generous to make some little girl happy. Well, Christmas morning came and there was a knock at the door. A Christmas box full of food, cookies, and a couple of gifts from their church was left on their steps. Well, Betty was shocked because she never even thought of their family as being a needy family. But even more shocking was that when she took the wrapping paper off from her gift, it was her doll. Ooh, I just got goosebumps. Her mama was right. The doll did go to a little girl who would love her forever. And Betty learned that kindness and generosity has a way of returning to kind and generous people. I would like to add a short story because angel encounters aren't always this dramatic, but they can leave a lasting effect on people the rest of their lives. I have a dear, dear friend who lost her daughter to cancer and left two little girls. So my dear friend became a mama grandma to those two little girls, and they're very close even to this day. Shortly after they lost their mama, they were on vacation from school, and one of the girls was really getting apprehensive about returning to school. She just wasn't ready to be around other people yet. And she told her grandma this. And her grandma says, "Well, how about if we pray and we ask God to send you an extra angel tomorrow to go to school with you?" And she said, "Oh, that would be great, Grandma." So they prayed together. Guess what happened in the morning? A snow day, no school. Now, see, we never know how they're going to answer us or how it's going to be taken care of. But the thing is to ask, believe, and thank them. Ken was on a hunting trip in northern Michigan on 25,000 acres of beautiful wooded land. Just prior to leaving his vehicle, he checked his compass and pinned it on his vest. All in working order. After gathering all of the rest of his gear, he took a 45-minute hike, which was about 3/4 of a mile. It was early and still very dark out. After nearly an hour of not seeing or hearing anything, well, he decided to move to a different location. When daylight started arriving, he said, "Well, time to give up. I haven't seen anything. Need to get back to my truck." He checks his compass and it does not work. Rule number one when lost, do not panic. So he tried to remain calm. He prayed for quite some time, and when he opened his eyes, he noticed something shiny in the grass. He brushed the grass away. Lo and behold, it was a working compass on 25,000 acres of land, folks. That's pretty amazing. I know this man personally. I'm going to hear another story from him. He does not make stuff up. Over 50 years ago, I gave birth to my firstborn son. I had gone 4 days past my due date, so was full term and delivered without drugs nor a C-section. However, they kept him in the prenatal nursery past 24 hours, which was normal. I mean, it's normal for him to be in prenatal for 24 hours, not after that. See why I read? When I inquired about this, I was told that he kept losing his breath and turning blue on them, so they were watching him very closely and running a lot of tests on him. I prayed like I never prayed in my life, and many others joined in my prayers. On the 10th day, the lung just opened up on its own. No surgeries, no drugs, no explanation as to why this even happened. Through church, I met a lady who did missionary work in Vietnam, and she was given a gift to speak to them in their language about God. But once she returned to the States, she forgot the language. Another missionary I met told me of a story about a young man who was not committed to Christ but became a missionary. They don't know why. Maybe he just wanted to get out of the States. Maybe it was his way to see the world, whatever. But through him pretending to be a Christian, he actually became a believer himself. The church that I used to attend was near a missionary village, so we had a lot of missionaries there. And I went to Bible classes, so I was blessed to hear a lot of wonderful stories. Also, while in a study class, a man named David shared his story on how his wife had recently died of cancer. He never went to church with his wife. After her death, he was totally lost, but because of her faith, he decided he was going to go to that church and see what it was all about. Well, now he is a believer, and he feels that this is his new Christian family. Debbie from Tennessee shares a story with us. One day, she and her friend Margie were taking a walk in the beautiful woods of Michigan. Up ahead on their path was a little doggie walking back and forth, back and forth. As they passed it, it seemed to ignore them. However, the situation weighed heavy on Debbie's dog-loving spirit. So they turned around and went to the nearest house, and the little dog followed them. They knocked on the door, and a man opened the door. Debbie asked him if this was his dog, to which he replied, "Yeah, you want it? Take it." Well, that upset both ladies, but Debbie told her friend there's no way her parents could take it, and she was living with them. As they continued their walk, Debbie began to pray to God, asking for a sign of what they should do. As she finished her prayer, she turned around, and the dog began running towards her and jumped right up into her arms. The gals took her back to their cabin and gave her a bath, a flea bath, learning she was full of fleas. Marjorie said, "Well, I'll take the dog to my parents and see if they will keep it." Well, they loved this little gal. They kept it, named her Dusty, short for Destiny, which is what Debbie had named her, and Dusty found a great loving home to live out the rest of her years. I've personally experienced other miracles during my life, as well as many angel encounters, with the most recent one occurring late September 2022. You see, we stayed at home during a Category 4 hurricane called Ian. It looked like it was headed 100 miles north of us, and hurricanes normally drop a category or two once they hit land, so I wasn't too concerned. After all, we had already been through a few of them, and the problem with this one was, though, it hit and hung right over us for 12 long, agonizing, and very traumatic hours. Stuff was flying through the air, debris hitting your home, the rain was beating so hard you could hardly hear. My husband went to bed with an attitude, there's nothing we can do since there's no way we can go outdoors with that wind and rain. Before we lost power, the emergency broadcast service told us no emergency vehicles would be going out. I looked at my phone. No emergency calls. That includes 911, folks. That's a pretty scary feeling to know if you should have an emergency, a heart attack, a stroke, a broken leg, whatever. Too bad you have to wait the storm out. Normally I'm in bed by 9 or 10, but on that September day, I was in the bathroom several times praying, as it was the only room without windows and in the center of our home. I prayed a lot. At 10:30 p.m., while I was praying, my phone rang. It like scared the bejesus out of me because our phone service was out, totally out. We couldn't even make calls out, let alone receive them. But somehow, my Christian snowbird neighbor who lives in Canada knew I needed her, and a call got through. She prayed with me for quite some time and told me they had a prayer group of over 200 people praying for the people in Florida. Now, there are 245 sites in our community, and when the hurricane had passed, our home had very little damage, the least in the entire park. It looked like a bomb went off with so much debris you would be hard pressed to see even one blade of grass. It is a miracle that we were not harmed as we watched in horror as our neighbor's home was being torn apart and other roofs ripped off. When the storm had quieted, we checked on all our neighbors and every single one was fine. Then the shock sets in. As we look around at all the damage, we began cleaning our yards and then our neighbors' yards. It took a couple of weeks just stacking debris and raking up leaves. You could hardly see the siding on the south side of our home for all the wet leaves that were stuck to it. Have you ever tried to get wet leaves off from siding? It's not easy. Well, it's been nearly a year, and one doesn't have to travel far to see still the damages of trees, fences, carports, outbuildings, floodings, and roofs. Yes, there are still a lot of blue tarps on roofs all over 3 counties. We escaped, but learned a lesson not to prejudge the strength of a hurricane. We be gone next time. Oh, here come that sun. Usually, I love being up early with all the birds and everything, but the sun gets a little tough on this old skin. This is the very best story on how God uses us as his disciples. You know, I think I'm missing a page here. Guess not. This involved my brother-in-law, Ken. He's a devout Christian. Years ago, he worked with a gentleman named Wally for 15 years who was not a Christian and recently had been diagnosed with cancer. His wife was also an atheist. Another mutual friend spoke with Ken about how he had tried to speak to Wally several times and was told that he never wanted to hear about a God again. In fact, if you mentioned his name again, we are no longer friends. Well, this really upset him, and he went to Ken because he knew Ken was a Christian, and they both prayed about the situation. This weighed heavy on Ken's mind, and finally he spoke with his pastor about it. The pastor told Ken, the last thing in this world this man needs is another person preaching to him about God. He said, "Why don't you just write a letter stating what God has done for you?" Well, Ken started the letter several times and just ended up with piles of wadded up paper because he just didn't even know where to start. I know this feeling because that's how I got when I was writing my book, Spoken Softly. Job is my least favorite book of the Bible. It just tears at my heart, still does. All the things the poor man went to. Yes, I know he was given many things in the end, but still, what all he went through, it was very difficult. And I would try typing, and I would just end up deleting, deleting, deleting. And finally, one day, I don't even know how long I prayed, but I sat there praying, "Help me, dear Lord, I don't even know what to say about Job." All of a sudden, words were coming, and I typed it. I left it as is, and I still look at that as a miracle. Personal miracle, another one that happened to me. I'm telling you, I had so many of them, but what good does it do? I share other people's with you. So Ken started praying, and in desperation, he prayed and prayed and prayed. He didn't even know how long he had been praying, but when he'd finished, he looked up and 5 pages were written, which he doesn't even remember writing them. He really didn't know what his next step was, but the letter was written, and so God helped him write the letter, so he had to trust him. He placed it inside a simple Christian card. Well, opportunity knocked a few weeks later. Remember, God's time frame is always different than ours. We're immediate people, aren't we? We want it all and we want it now. So a few weeks later, the guys he worked with, they had a golf outing as a benefit for Wally, as he and his wife were moving to Texas. Ken took his card and letter with him, knowing he would find a way to get it to him. It was near the end of the tournament, and Ken walked up to him, shook his hand, wished him well, and handed the card to him, asking him, "Please don't open this until you are alone." Well, a few weeks later, Ken ran into his other buddy at work and asked, "Hey, how's Wally doing?" He goes, "Ken, you wouldn't believe it. Wally and his wife started going to church every Sunday, and they read the Bible together every day." A few months later, Wally died, but he died a Christian. The moral to this story is that no matter what situation we come up against, pray sincerely, asking for help, and then take action so that on what you are told to do, even if you do not understand the directions. So, yes, I do believe in angels. I believe there are thousands of them in existence. And I do believe in guardian angels. And I believe they're around me all the time. So like and share this video with all your family and friends. And if you have a story, please add it in the comments. The world needs to be uplifted right now. May God and his angels protect and guide you.